Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily update for today, February 22nd, 2021. With the deep freeze in Texas behind us, we can take a look at what can be expected as a reaction from the crazed proponents of green ideology. This came out in the form of a discussion over the weekend of an escalation of environmentalism, of windmills, of sustainable energy, with a call from the Biden administration and also from John Kerry, who's the special envoy on climate for the president, that there will be a major international conference, excuse me, on April 22nd, which will be Earth Day, to fight climate change. Now, this occurs as it is clear that there were elements of the administration, and whether it was Biden or the continuation of just the permanent bureaucracy, but elements of the Department of Energy which acted in a way that worsened the situation in Texas. Governor Abbott on the 12th of February issued a declaration of a state of disaster, and the Texas Railroad Commission responded to that. The Railroad Commission regulates the gas and electricity. They responded with an emergency order specifying increasing gas supplies to ERCOT generators. ERCOT is the Electricity Reliability Company of Texas. They granted what they called enforcement discretion to generators which may exceed emission requirements due to the emergency conditions. Well, the Department of Energy responded with an order countering that, essentially saying that it could not operate at full capacity without violating federal air quality or other permit limitations, and therefore they must stay within acceptable emission standards. And the result was that the Department of Energy did not waive environmental restrictions to maximize energy output. This was an element of what caused the problem. But the deeper problem, as I outlined in an article which is available on the LaRouche Organization website on the Texas deep freeze, is the combined effects of green ideology with so-called sustainable energy and deregulation. Now, what we're seeing is the administration is going to double down on its green policies with a call for an international summit to fight climate change on Earth Day, which is April 22nd. And you have John Kerry, for example, issuing a statement on this, sounding very much like Greta Thunberg. Kerry said, between now and 2030, this is the crucial time. It's what people do in the next 10 years that matter. And then he said, actually, it's 9 years. And he warned that the Texas deep freeze is coming from global warming, not from some other factor. And he said there's no room for BS anymore. That from John Kerry. Now, additionally, you have other voices like that of Sir Michael Bloomberg, whose Beyond Coal initiative is spending upwards of $500 million to shut down coal plants around the country. And then you have none other than Bill Gates, the Microsoft multi-billionaire, who told the Washington Post, we must have breakthroughs in the next decade, which is the same point Kerry and Thunberg are making. And he said that, excuse me, what we do in the next decade will prepare the way so we can use the next 2 decades to 2050 to replace the entire industrial economy. Now, this is what Lyndon LaRouche warned many years ago was the ultimate goal of the environmentalist movement. And it goes back to the first Earth Day, which took place in 1970, which was sponsored by Gaylord Nelson, who was a senator from Wisconsin. And what Nelson decided was that you could use the student movement against the war, the energy of young people, to turn them against industrial society, and in particular warning them about the dangers of the population explosion. Nelson organized Earth Day around teach-ins to bring students into this movement. He spoke about these demonstrations as necessary to counteract the impact of 150 years of industrial development. So he was clear, industry is the problem, and population growth is the problem. In 2002, he gave an interview where he warned about the environmental consequence of continued population growth and why we must move towards something called sustainable population, just like sustainable energy. His book in 1972, Beyond Earth Day, warns that overpopulation is the greatest threat facing the United States and the world. Now, this coincided with the global movement from the international financial elite against population, with the 1972 Club of Rome report, Limits to Growth, which argued that they restored the Malthusian dogma that there's no way to sustain a population that's growing, and therefore we must have either regulated population reduction or we'll have population reduction caused by disease, famine, and war. Now, in 1972 also there was a Rockefeller Commission report, which was set up by President Nixon, which called for population stabilization. It started in its introduction by saying that no substantial benefits will result from the further growth of the U.S. population, and instead we must have a sustainable national population policy. Perhaps they were reluctant to say a reduced population size, but the idea of sustainable was introduced as a way of easing the path towards reducing population. Now, in the same period, Henry Kissinger, as National Security Advisor to Nixon, and then later to Gerald Ford, was responsible for something called National Security Study Memo 200. The official title was Implications of Worldwide Population Growth for U.S. Security and Overseas Interests. In November 1975, this became the official policy of the United States, though it was classified for another 20 years. And what did it say? The greatest threat to America is unrestrained population growth in 13 nations, among which were India, Nigeria, China, Indonesia, and a call for measures to reduce the population in these countries. Now, LaRouche identified all of these things, the Rockefeller Commission, the Gaylord Nelson Earth Day, the Kissinger NSSM 200, as a revival of the old imperial policy of the Malthusian population law, going back to Parson Malthus, who argued that population growth is geometric and food growth is arithmetic, and therefore you're going to have constant survival crises due to overpopulation, and that no government should take any measures to protect the poorest people because it's the natural law of the universe that the poorest should die out, as though human beings are like a population of rabbits or deer that overpopulate the food supply available to them. This goes back to Malthus's 1798 document, An Essay on the Principle of Population, which was written for the British Empire. Now, to see this reemerge at the present time tells you something about where the policy doctrine is coming from. If you look at the Green New Deal, and as we've been reporting, the Great Reset, this is coming from the circles of the City of London and the British monarchy in combination with the radical environmentalists and anti-growth faction in the United States, which on the one side has a left component, the green environmentalists, but also has a so-called conservative component in the policy of deregulation and privatization, which is also a part of the Great Reset. Privatization which must not be interfered with by governments. That's why they're against sovereign national governments. So you have the anti-sovereignty movement and the quackery of environmentalists merging as the great threat. This is what we've identified in a report we put out called The Great Leap Backward. I would encourage you, go to Executive Intelligence Review website, download the portions of this report that you can, and purchase a copy. maybe purchase many copies to get this out so that we can provide an immunization to the insanity of what's about to come with the move toward an Earth Day and an April 22nd International Summit to push the environmentalist Green New Deal in combination with the Great Reset. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll be back again tomorrow.